afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is David Russell Jensen. My Tlingit name is Shakagook. I am pleased to be here with you this afternoon. Sealaska Heritage is committed to providing accessible community programming, and none of it would be possible without the support of donors. You can contribute online at sealaskaheritage.org/giving. Today, we are joined by Auryan Ratliff, Director of Creative and Emerging Technologies at Arizona State University, who will present Unlocking the Potential of Generative AI, an introduction and practical guide. Ratliff has spent nearly a decade leading teams in developing digital tools at Arizona State University, focusing on virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and other emerging technologies. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end of the lecture, as well as throughout his presentation. If you're here with us in person, please silence your cell phones. And thank you and welcome our presenter.
All right, test. Can everybody hear me? Perfect. Thank you for that, David. I will jump right in for today. So this is me. David already introduced myself, so I will keep moving here. I want to set the tone for today. So we have kind of three main areas of this presentation. First will be, what is AI? Diving into that in a little bit more detail so we can have a more technical understanding. I think AI is a bit of a buzzword right now that's getting thrown on a lot of different tools and technology. So understanding that in a little bit more detail. After that, we have a prompting primer, talking a little bit about prompt engineering, what that is, and a few simple tips to get you all getting more productive output from the AI tools that you're using. And then last but not least, we have a few hands-on demos that we will be showing. One thing I also want to call out for this session is I would love for this to be pretty interactive. I think there's so much content and I could be talking about all of the things I'm showing here today for hours. So I prefer that what I speak about is relevant to you all. So if you have a question or something in particular that you want to know more about, just raise your hand. Happy to answer those. And I think that would be a better use of our time. So with that, we'll jump right in. I want to start with a poll just to kind of get a gauge of how often you all are using AI. Ignore this piece right now, but for those of you in the room, I'm wondering if you can just raise your hand if you've used some sort of generative AI tool in the last month or so. So ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Anthropic. All right, keep your hands up if you use this every month, at least you're using this on a monthly basis. All right, keep them up if you're using it on a weekly basis. All right, on a daily basis. Okay, no one here on a daily basis. All right, that is really helpful. But it sounds like a lot of you have used the tools before. So hopefully we can get you guys up to some daily users if that's productive for you all. All right, before we jump in, I want to start with this quote here. It says, "It's not about your AI strategy, it's about your strategy in an AI world." This is more so geared towards organizations or businesses, but I think from an individual level, it still makes a lot of sense. I like this quote because AI is a foundational technology, very similar to the internet or the steam engine. When those things were invented, it fundamentally shifted the way humanity goes about doing a number of different things. So the steam engine changed manufacturing, locomotion, transportation, brought in the Industrial Revolution. The internet, big thing as well, changed how we get access to information, how we connect with each other, how we socialize. AI has that same fundamental power to shift how our society is going to interact with each other and interact with the world around us. So it's not just about understanding how you work with AI, but understanding how you will live in a world that is an AI world. And I encourage you to take all of this technology very seriously, because I think it's going to be integrated into every facet of our lives before we know it. After that, what even is AI? So I want to start with this graphic here. I think this is the easiest way I've found to communicate what AI is. Trust me, if you go Googling, you will find even more complicated terminology. But I think at the lowest level, this is the best way to communicate it. So we have two sides to this analogy, one being human intelligence. These are things that are uniquely, or humans are uniquely good at. So things like reasoning or empathy or creativity, these things that we think are part of the human condition. And then on the right side, we have machine intelligence. So these are things that machines were uniquely good at in the past. So long algorithms or equations, searching through large amounts of data sets, automations, things that can be done very fast, repetition over long periods of time. That's machine intelligence. Artificial intelligence is where those two types of intelligence start to overlap with each other. So you have things that we considered uniquely human and the traits of things that we considered uniquely attributed to machines. You can start to do both of those at the same time with this technology. Another key part of this graphic that I want to call out here is you'll see we have former AI. There has been a big boom in the terminology of AI and how people are using it, but this isn't a new technology. It's actually something we've been using for decades. If you all have an Alexa or a Google Home at your house, that is using AI. If you've ever used voice to text on your phone, that leverages AI. What most people are referring to nowadays, and the cause for this big boom around AI, is a technology called generative AI, which we'll get into in a little bit more today. But this circle is just showing you kind of where AI was before, and what we are experiencing is the growth of the capability. Oops, got ahead of myself. We're experiencing the growth of the capabilities to this new paradigm where these circles are starting to overlap even more with each other. And this is not the end. I think that machine intelligence bubble is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the capabilities of that AI technology are only going to grow with it. So you leave here today, you want to talk about AI, it is the combination of human and machine intelligence. After that, what actually is a part of the AI that I'm working with? I think there's three main components that I want to call out. The first being your data set. This is essentially the not the brains, but the repository of all the information that your AI has access to. Modern models that people are working with, if you're using like GPT 4.0, if you've used ChatGPT or some of the Gemini models that Google has, there are billions and billions, and even for some models, trillions of parameters that these models have access to. Parameters is just a fancy term for content or data. They have all of these individual points of data. It is searching through all of that data, creating connections between that data, finding patterns between that data, and using all of that information to then provide some form of output. So that's our data. That's what it's referencing. Our algorithm is the piece that is looking through all that data, finding those connections, identifying those patterns. That's the actual algorithm piece. And then finally, you have your interface. This is where your output lives. This is whether you're in ChatGPT, the actual website where you get your response. Other tools that maybe create images or video, they have their own outputs. Other tools could even, or your interface could even be voice. Going back to Siri or Alexa, there is no website you're interfacing with. It's just a voice that responds to you. So these three main components are probably the largest aspects of AI that you'll be interacting with, and you'll want to understand as you do more with the technology. After that, what type of AI are we even talking about? This is a little bit what I've hit on before of there are many different types of AI, all built in different ways, all with different use cases. So at the top, we have generative AI. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, so I might skip past that. We have things like natural language processing. This is the ability to use AI to understand what we are saying as humans and translate that into something that machines can understand and take action on. We have machine learning. This is predictive analytics. I give you a large enough set of numbers. At a certain point, you could start to predict the numbers that will come next. This can be used for a number of different things. We have speech analysis, vision analysis. Again, we give you large amounts of audio for the speech capabilities, and depending on that, you can now use that data to understand what I'm saying to you or translate it into other forms of data. Same thing for vision. And if we're being honest, robotics as well. It's all just data sets that get represented through different outputs. So robotics is mainly just around physical hardware, robots, Roombas that are actually moving and taking action. That's what robotics is going to represent here. And then lastly, we have things like neural networks. This is really, really advanced AI technology, essentially giving it so much data and creating so many patterns against that data that those connections starting to form actually resemble the way that our brains work and our neurons are connecting to each other in our brain, hence the term neural network for some of these servers and computers that are running this technology. But for today, I think, actually, before we even jump into generative AI, I want to add a disclaimer here. This is my personal way of breaking out some of these technologies. I'll be honest, if you do the research, you'll see a lot of people have a lot of different ways of framing this technology. Sometimes these different forms of AI are subsets of each other. Sometimes they are completely different from each other. Or sometimes some of the AI forms I talked about before can be represented as one group of AI. So it's really confusing. I found that this is the easiest way for me to understand it. But if you go somewhere else and you see them arranging the same terminology in different ways, don't be concerned. I think there's still a lot of discussion happening in the industry to come to a baseline that everybody agrees on. But let's dive into a little bit more detail on generative AI, since that is the hot craze right now, and what we will be talking about in more detail. So what is generative AI? We have a more technical solution here, but I'll give you kind of how I see it personally. Essentially, generative AI is any form of AI where you give it some sort of prompt. This is you asking a question or defining some sort of task for the AI. And then given that task, that AI will perform some sort of action on the back end, look at any of the necessary data that it needs, and then it will provide you with an output. That output is generating new content in some way, shape, or form. This could be text, this could be video, this could be imagery. It is generating new pieces of content that did not exist before. That is the generative aspect of this AI. And so I'm going to be getting into demos, so I want to just keep it brief here, but please let me know if you want more detail there. I think the largest example, probably the most prominent person in this space or business in this space when it comes to generative AI is ChatGPT. ChatGPT was created by OpenAI. I think that's a really important distinction. I'm going to be talking about OpenAI models later on, and their models are not what ChatGPT is. ChatGPT is an interface, if we go back to the three components that we talked about before, but then the actual algorithm, the actual model that's handling all those data, handling all that data and making all of those connections, that's the actual models that I'll be referring to later. So OpenAI is the company, ChatGPT is the interface. In terms of the popularity of ChatGPT and the popularity of just generative AI in general, this is a chart showing how fast certain products or companies reached 1 million users. You'll see on the far left, we have Netflix. Took Netflix 3.5 years to get to 1 million users. Airbnb, 2.5 years. Twitter, 2 years. Facebook, 300 days. Spotify, 150. All the way to the bottom where we have ChatGPT, which in 5 days had over 1 million users. This is the fastest growing application or use of technology in human history. So if that doesn't show you how much of a hit this is and how quickly this technology is moving, I have some other demos that will hopefully send that point home. But it is now time, I think, to get on that AI train and be aware of what's happening and how people are using that technology, because it really is everywhere, and a large amount of people are using it. So with that, I want to just jump right into ChatGPT. I think some of the things I want to talk about are just easier if we can all look at it together. So we are in ChatGPT here. Show of hands. I know everyone talked about using tools. Who here has used ChatGPT? Okay, half the room. Perfect. So then I will keep it pretty simple. I'm pulling up my cheat sheet here on my phone. And I'm going to start with a simple question. Let's just say something. What should I eat for lunch today? Really straightforward question. I want to start with something simple for the folks who haven't used the tool. Essentially, I think the easiest way to think about this is imagine you're just talking to someone and there's another person on the other side of this conversation that has access to all of the world's knowledge. And so imagine it's like your smartest best friend ever. And so you can really talk about anything. So let's fix our spelling mistake there. What should I eat for lunch today? And boom, like that, I get a response from the machine pretty quickly here. And it even gives me some options. Say, hey, you want something healthy and light? You want something quick and filling? Or you want something more energy boosting? So it gives me a number of different options. Great response. This is also a much more human response than something like Google. If I search in Google, which I eat today, it'll just say, hey, there's a Chick-fil-A down the street. That's not a very human response. This is understanding what I'm asking for and responding to me like a human would. So one of the nice parts about ChatGPT as well and working with AI is the way that you're able to have a conversation with it. This isn't just a question and answer. It is a conversation. So it's like, maybe these are okay, but it's like, I want something spicy. And so now it could take what we already talked about, ingest this new information that I asked for, and then boom, it spits out some spicy options for me. We can go even further and say, that buffalo chicken wrap sounds pretty good. Let me write this out. And I could say something like, give me the recipe for the buffalo chicken wrap. All right. And so now it helped me kind of think through some options. It gave me some information. I said, that was nice, but I'm actually feeling this. It gave me some additional information. And then now I said, actually, that sounds great. Give me more information on how I can actually make that a reality. And now we've got a full recipe here that's telling me all the ingredients I need, walking me through all the instructions. I got to cook the chicken. You should season your chicken breast. You should heat up the skillet. You should toss it in buffalo sauce, assemble your wrap it up, and then, a few additional steps here. So really awesome. I went from someone who had no idea what they wanted to do for lunch to having a complete list of ingredients I can go to the store and pick up and make this recipe right now. Great way of showing how AI can really just simplify things in your life. Be a thought partner to assist you when you get stuck. And that's a great way of using the technology. I'm really big on getting unstuck. I know that's probably not the right way of saying it, but coming from a university, that's how I like to communicate it to some of our students. We don't want this to be a tool that solves all your problems and does all your thinking for you. But when you find yourself in a jam, AI can help get you out of those jams. Let's do another example here. So just again, to show you the capabilities for some of our newer users. I could say something like, let's start a new chat actually, so I don't, it doesn't start taking all that recipe into consideration for when I ask it. I can say, write me a poem about the Alaskan wilderness. You guys will have to tell me how accurate this is. All right, so in Alaska's wild embrace, where mountains kiss the endless sky and glaciers creep as time slips by, the tundra whispers in the breeze in a wilderness of ancient trees. The river rush and tamed, unbound through valleys deep. No human sound. Eagles soar on winds so cold above the lands where wolves grow bold. I will stop there because I want to read this whole thing, but I've already got chills. And so you can see this is a really fun way to interact with the tool, and it really can produce any form of content. I could ask it to help me write songs, or say, hey, I actually didn't like that second verse. Let's make it about some of the local wildlife, and it would update all of this for us. Normally I would type that in, but we got a lot to cover today, so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do one more example. I really love this example because I am from Arizona State University. Education is a big focus for us. I can say something like, explain nuclear physics like I'm 5. All right, so let's see what response we get here. So it says, nuclear physics is the study of tiny particles that make up everything around us. Imagine everything is made of super tiny building blocks, smaller than you can see with your eyes. These building blocks are called atoms. Each atom is even smaller parts inside of it called a nucleus, which is like the core center of the atom. Inside the nucleus, there are two things, protons and neutrons. And then the example continues to go on. But I think this is extremely powerful from an educational use case, because now we have the ability to personalize essentially any lesson for any student at scale. This is on par, and it absolutely depends on how you design your experiences and your courses and your course material. But if done properly, AI can simulate what it's like to work with a tutor and have this one-on-one relationship with someone who understands you and understands your course material and can really cater to your needs. I can ramp things up when you really understand these concepts, and I can slow things down when you're struggling to understand certain aspects of this as well. So the capabilities and the potential here in terms of providing personalized learning is extremely profound. That's actually where a lot of my work is right now. So this is great. We use ChatGPT. We've seen some example output. So let's actually go back to our presentation, and I'll talk a little bit more about that before we get into some other demos. So I want to talk about what is prompting. So I already mentioned it slightly before, but I want to just get into it in a little bit more detail. Prompting is the act of actually communicating what you want from this AI model. You are all prompting. Half the room raised their hand when we talked about ChatGPT. You all have done prompt engineering in some way, shape, or form. You'll hear me, I'm kind of interchangeably using prompting and prompt engineering. Those are the same things. I think the tech industry just likes to make things sound more complicated than they really are. I wouldn't say it's engineering. You're really just speaking English or whatever language that you're communicating with the AI in, but you just need to be descriptive. It's the same way when you speak with friends. If you're extremely vague, it can cause confusion in the conversations you're having. Same thing with AI. You want to be as explicit as possible to get the outcome that you're actually looking for that will actually provide value for you. I'm going to get into 3 tips that you all can use to get more from your prompting. But before we get into those, I have a few things I want to call out that you should be mindful of when you're working with AI. The first is be cautious with your data. So the first is most free versions of the AI tools that you are using right now. If you are on the free version, the reason it's free is because they actually take the questions that you are asking and the responses that you're getting, and those things are being used to train new versions of that model. And for many people and in many use cases, that's totally okay. But if you are working with sensitive data for your business, personal information about yourself or your family, those things these companies will have access to if you use them on the free term and you're not checking which information that they will be collecting. So be mindful about what you're giving these tools. I know if you are on I think it's the Pro or Plus account, it's the first tier in the monthly subscription for ChatGPT. If you are on those paid versions, your data is not being used to train future models. Actually, that's not entirely correct. There is a toggle that you will receive in your settings to turn off the ability to send your data to those models. So just make sure if you are on those paid tiers, you want to protect your data, you are looking into that and taking the proper precautions inside of your settings to make sure your data is not being passed to ChatGPT. There's actually an issue that happened, I want to say this was last year. Folks at Samsung were using ChatGPT to summarize some of their legal documents, and then ChatGPT produced a new model, and someone could ask a question like, what was Samsung's legal policies on this? And ChatGPT knew all of this private information about Samsung, and it's because their data was ingested and is now part of this public corpus of knowledge that's inside of ChatGPT. So absolutely want to be careful with that. Another big thing that you should be mindful of with AI is it can hallucinate. That's just the fancy AI term for say something incorrect. The AI does not, for all intents and purposes, understand what's right and wrong. It's more so, again, just identifying patterns and trying to provide an answer that it thinks you would like. So in many cases, it is correct because it's pulling from data sets that has correct information. But in many cases, it can make things up. It can create false patterns and say things that are incorrect. There might be data sets powering these AI models that have conflicting views, and it can pull from one more than another. So you always want to be mindful that you are checking what you are receiving from these models to make sure that they're factually correct. That's also why I think they are much better for more creative use cases or more generative use cases where it's not about having a deterministic output or specific value delivered at the end, but an area where you have a little bit more creative freedom with your output, like a poem or a recipe, versus, instructions on how to assemble IKEA furniture. That needs to be done in a very specific way. So yeah, just be mindful that you are cross-checking all the information you receive from the AI. All right. Now that we got those disclaimers out of the way, we'll get into those 3 tips I have for you all that will improve your output with ChatGPT, I think, immediately. The first is use the basic templates. I know you're all thinking, what is the basic template? I will show you in just a moment, so bear with me there. The second is iterate. Probably the best part about ChatGPT is it is a chat. Like I mentioned before, you can go back and forth with the AI. And so I find a lot of people will put a question in and go, I want this from AI. And then they get a response and it's not exactly what they expect. So they go, this thing sucks. I'm not going to use it. And there's a part of it that's, I'd find most of the times if you're getting an output you don't like, it's probably due to the prompt that you're inputting into the tool. So I highly encourage you to go back and forth with the AI. Go, no, I meant this, or fix this piece, or let's improve this section. Think of it as again, a partner that you're working with. And so the more you can communicate your needs and your wants and go back and forth, the better your output will be. And then lastly, go beyond a conversation. Even though this is a chat interface, there's some other ways you can go about interacting with this tool that I think goes outside of the realms of a traditional conversation and more into a input-output relationship similar to like a calculator. Hey, I gave you an input, now give me that output. I'm not talking to you, I just need something from you for a particular use case. So I will show examples for all of those right now. I want to start with our basic template. This I think is kind of rule of thumb. If you format your prompts like this, you will start to see better output. So the first piece we have here is your role. Really powerful tool for working with AI is giving it some sort of background. So say you are creating recipes, you would tell the AI, you are a gourmet pastry chef. That provides all of this contextual data that we're not explicitly saying, but it understands from the term gourmet pastry chef that will completely affect the output that you have. So if you're putting together an itinerary for a trip, you could say you're an ultimate travel guide. If you're crafting emails, you can say you're an HR expert and I need your help writing these emails. Give it that role. It does a lot in terms of curtailing your output to align with what you're thinking. The second is your task. This is what you actually want the model to do. So write me that email, create that itinerary, write these stories, give me reviews on these papers. That's your actual task. Next, you have your context. Your context is any other piece of information about your task that will help the AI complete it in the way that you expect. So say you are generating recipes and you say, hey, I want a recipe for fajitas. Some additional context might be, here are the ingredients that I have. I have access to a stove and these other cooking instruments. And it'll go, oh, okay, well, we catered the instructions to align with what you have. So any additional information that you can give the tool, the better your output will be. Next, we have format. So how do you want to actually receive that output from the tool? ChatGPT in particular has a few different options. You can put this data in a tabular format. You can get bulleted lists, numbered lists. There's even code output that you can do. So telling the model how you want to receive its response, very important. For more written output, you can also denote tone. So you want this to be business casual, extremely friendly, more professional. You can state that as well. And then last but not least, you also have examples. I think examples is something that I don't always include in my prompt, but when I do, it is extremely powerful. Say you are writing emails and you're writing an email that kind of covers all the points that were talked about in a meeting that you just had, and you've written this email plenty of times before. You can actually go and take a previous email and say, hey, here's how I've formatted it in the past. Here are all the meeting notes. Just write that email with the summary of that meeting, and it will be able to align with your writing style, the notes that you've provided, and then you will hopefully get an output of the email you'd like to send, copy and paste it into your Outlook client, and you can send it off to all the folks who need access to that. So those are all the 6 major components of your template. Starting at the top, we have our task. This is a mandatory part of your prompt. So this is something that will always be there when you're working with this technology. Your context and your role, those are extremely important, but not necessary. So I find I'm still using those like 85% of the time. And then lastly, you have your format, tone, and examples. Those are nice to haves. You don't need them in every prompt, but when you can provide it, it will help significantly with what you're receiving from these tools. So that is our template. That is actually the only other tip that has slides. So I'm actually going to go back to this slide here, and we're going to put all of these into practice right now in ChatGPT. So let's go into this tool, and we're going to start a new chat here. And I want to show an example for leveraging the template, like I mentioned before. So I actually have a little cheat sheet here. Don't read any of this. I'm going to copy this prompt, and we'll say something like, what should I do today? Oh, wow. Okay. So it's a very complicated day. Prepare for your CEO meeting, AI presentation on ChatGPT voice demos, AI learning and technologist presentation. A little context here, because I'm sure you're like, whoa, why did ChatGPT just tell him to do all of this? I was not planning to talk about this, but ChatGPT actually has a feature called memory, where it can memorize things about me and things I've talked to it about in the past, and then use that to inform responses. And so all of these are things I deal with on a day-to-day basis for my work, but are not super relevant to maybe activities you all want to do today. So we can actually come back to my little cheat sheet here. And I have a more robust prompt that aligns with the template that I just talked about. So I'm actually going to do a new chat. We'll paste it in here. And I said, you are an expert travel agent. Again, so giving it a role. I said, and I need you to create an itinerary of activities for me today. I'm currently in Juneau, Alaska, and would like to do outdoorsy activities, but nothing too intense. So that's some additional context for the model. Please write this as a table. This is our format, and that I can easily scan and in a very casual and natural tone. So again, providing our format and our tone as well. And then all I have to do is hit enter. This example, we didn't have examples, but that's the one piece of the template I left out here. But if I had a previous itinerary that I really liked, I could very easily provide that as an example in this output. So let's see what we got here. Let me also zoom in. I see a bunch of people craning their necks here. And so we've got 8 a.m. breakfast at the Sandpiper Cafe with some details on that. 9:30, walk to Mendahall Glacier. 11:30, whale. I butchered that. I'm so sorry. 11:30, we have the whale watching tour. We have lunch at Tracy's King Crab Shack, and then Mount Roberts Tramway, and some additional information here. But this is already a much different output than what we got here. So this just goes to show you how leveraging that template will actually get you a more concise output. And then show of hands, is this an actually good itinerary, or how much of this is even true? Okay, all of it. All right, perfect. Okay, I can't fit it all into those time slots. All right, no, that's very, very good feedback. So again, one question, fantastic itinerary. I could even respond back and say, hey, this feels a little short in terms of how long these time slots are, and it would adjust all of this accordingly. But great example of how using that template will get you better output from these tools. Next, I want to talk about, what was the other example? Go beyond a conversation. So we're gonna start a new chat here. And then I have another template. Don't read it yet. We'll copy this. And so what I'm saying in this template here, and it's worded a little weird here, I'll be honest with you, but I found this still provides the best output for me. So even weird things like that are things you want to be mindful of when speaking to the AI. Grammatically correct isn't always the best way to get the output you're looking for. But this says, you are an expert presentation assistant. From now on, I will respond to you with a topic or a few lines of information, and you will create the perfect slide for the topic to include in a slide deck. Your slide should include a compelling and informational piece of content on the topic, some ideas for visuals to accompany the topic, and some ideas for good topics to cover after this slide. So I'm essentially giving it the rule set. Here's how I want you to function from here on out. And it says, got it, I'm ready to work. So we can give it a topic here. I'm just gonna say trout, and let's see what we get. The life cycle of trout. So it gives me a slide title, gives me some slide content. So it says introduction to trout. Trout are freshwater fish belonging to the salmon family. Oh, oops, my mic's that's fallen here. Belonging to the salmon family, often found in cool, clear streams and lakes. They are key species in many ecosystems that are known for their adaptability and varied diet. Some life cycle overview content. It even gives me some ideas for visuals that should be on that slide. So the life cycle diagram, an image of a trout, habitat, infographic on trout species, really helpful things, and then some topics to cover after the slide. So if I liked this, obviously I could just take all this content, copy and paste it into my slide deck tool of choice. Maybe Google search some of these visual ideas, bring that into my deck, and then start thinking about what comes next in my presentation. So I really like ecological importance of trout. So I'll just take that, I'll copy that, and we'll paste it into the tool. And just like that, we have a new slide that we can add to our slide deck. So I've done this many a times for presentations at work of, I know the general concept of what I want to present on, but maybe writing all that content and thinking of all those images is just going to take too long. You can do this and have a pretty well fleshed out presentation in 30 minutes to 15 to 30 minutes. So, and again, this isn't a conversation the way that we saw it before. This is more so, I gave you the rules for how I'm now going to interact with you, and you have a very specific way that I need you to provide that output. And it's a little bit more function focused. So really start thinking about those unique ways you can leverage ChatGPT like that. And then the last is, was iterate. And I think we've actually already seen a few examples of this. If you provide something, you don't get the right output, just keep going back and forth with it. I don't have a specific example. Actually, you know what? I do have an example. Let's jump right in. I know we're almost running out of time, but I think this is such a cool example. I'm going to do it anyways. So we actually have an image here. This is something that we didn't talk about in too much depth, but I'll show the functionality. We talked a lot about recipes and what to eat, but what's actually really nice about ChatGPT as well is it takes image inputs. It's actually a multimodal model. It just means it works with other types of information, including images, PDFs, certain text documents or PowerPoints. You can actually upload them directly into the tool, and it uses all of its AI prowess to understand that content and then gives a response based off that. So all we did was say this was a picture of our fridge. I picked a really bad picture of a fridge on purpose. A lot of the labels are obscured. There's not a lot of food in here, all things considered. And so what we could do is we can ask the model, give me some recipes for the food in this picture. And so now first thing it's going to do is use its multimodal capabilities to understand what food is in the fridge. So you can see it even breaks that down for me. We've got butter or spread. I think that's up here in the image. We got some yogurts here that it calls out, some pasta bake meal. I think that's, this right here, lettuce, tomatoes, potatoes, chicken, red onion chutney. All of these are in this image actually. You can even see if it's hard to zoom in, but that even says red onion chutney. So obviously there's certain objects it's recognizing, but in other cases it's literally just reading labels in the image. So extremely powerful. Takes all of those ingredients and says, hey, based off that, here are a few things that you could try making. Here's a chicken and potato tray bake, tomato, red onion chutney salad, quick chicken salad, some great options. And so really love this use case. I actually use this a lot. If you have the ChatGPT mobile app, which I highly recommend you all get, you can actually just snag a pic straight from the phone and then ask for some recipes. And I do it more often than I probably should. But it is a great use case. But again, we're here to demonstrate the capabilities of iterating. So we can go, this is good, but kind of even to my earlier point, I want something spicy. And now it'll take all of these recipes that we received and it'll figure out a way to make them spicy. And you're like, okay, this is pretty good. Again, another example of what we saw before, but just trying to show how you don't need to put all of this in the immediate prompt. You can always iterate to get this output. You can say, put these steps in a table format. Again, normally you can include that in your first prompt, but it's never too late to just ask it after the fact, and you can see all those recipes are now being condensed in a table format that's really easy for me to understand, and I can continue to go back and forth with this until I get something that I was what I was looking for. But I think you all understand the key components there. So those are your tips. Try those out today. I think you'll be really impressed with your output so far. From there, I want to keep going with some additional examples here. I'm looking at my cheat sheet. All right, it looks like we have 10 minutes left. I have some more ChatGPT examples that I'll come back to if there's time and you all are interested. But I want to jump to some other software. While ChatGPT, I think, is the most popular, there's a lot of new technologies that are coming out of generative AI that I think is just interesting to know about. So one that I'll call out is 11 Labs. 11 Labs is a generative AI voice synthesis tool. So leveraging AI, you can come in here. We can actually pick a voice, ignore these voices I already have here. Maybe we'll do, what's this person sound like?
Life without love is like a tree without blossoms or fruit.
Ooh, okay, it was very deep. And so I'll choose that voice. You can see here I put in some text, and then all I have to do is hit play.
Life without love is like a tree.
I have to hit generate speech, actually. Sorry about that. And
Hello, Sealaska Heritage Institute. Thank you for having me. I hope you all are enjoying this talk on AI.
All right, so super straightforward. The way that that voice was built is it's actually individuals all around the world who can upload samples of them speaking. You can just read through an article or a blog post or any other audio samples you have. You can give it to this machine. It will use that as a data set that then builds an artificial voice based off the samples that it has access to. So right now, this is a publicly available voice, but if I come in here, you can see I have one with my name on it. And so now let's actually hit generate speech, and I'm hoping this is coming through well.
Hello, Sealaska Heritage Institute. Thank you for having me. I hope you all are enjoying this talk on AI.
All right, so that was an AI voice model of myself that I built. I know many of you are like, that is terrifying. And it absolutely is, but I want to talk about some of the positive use cases for this. Something that we've been looking at least from the Arizona State University realm, is how can we start to leverage this for education? And so one of the coolest parts about these AI voice models is the AI understands different languages and can communicate in different languages, but it's still my voice. So I'm just in Google Translate here. I'm taking some content. I actually took that same sentence, said, hello, Sealaska Heritage Institute, and my little introduction, and then converted that to Spanish. Now all I have to do is come back in here, put it into the software. I'll click generate speech. And then...
Hola, Sealaska Heritage Institute. Gracias por invitarme. Espero que todos estén disfrutando de esta charla sobre inteligencia artificial.
All right, so that was me speaking Spanish. And even as an Arizona native, I cannot speak Spanish that good. And so there's a lot of potential here. Right now, ASU Online is only offered to English-speaking individuals, but the idea that we could take all of our course content, translate it to every possible language, and have it be delivered to students in a way that is in their natural tongue is extremely powerful educational offering. And so there are many, many, many use cases that I think leverages technology in a positive, helpful way for society. But I also want to recognize that a lot of this technology can be used in nefarious ways. I'll be touching on that a little bit more at the end of the presentation as time permits, but I just want to call out, I see how this technology can be used both ways. Another example I want to jump to, this is actually a generative AI demo that was built by Google. So it's actually for generating music. So we already have our prompt that's in here. I might just hit generate again to show you that all of this is happening live and in a short amount of time. Oh, of course. Let me refresh this. All right, we'll hit tab. So it says winter afternoon, cup of tea, smooth vibes, slow tempo. All right, we'll generate this here. And this tool actually does some really cool formatting of your prompt from a user experience standpoint. So it actually groups certain Hold on, we will go back to that wonderful jazzy song. But you'll notice that in our prompt, it actually started to pick up on certain aspects of our prompt and could assign it to specific categories. And it makes it easy for me to change this. So it said winter, that's a season. Maybe in this drop down, we also have spring, summer, autumn. It's a really natural way to change the prompt that you have. Same thing here. We had afternoon. So it's got some other terms that we can sub in for that. And then maybe instead of a slow tempo, obviously we can maybe crank that up to be a really fast tempo. So I just really like this in terms of how you're interacting with our prompts, and you're already starting to see how people are changing that. Things where it's like, oh, you talk to ChatGPT. Do you talk to it? Do you type to it? Do you get UIs like this? There's so much that's changing there. So I like to call that out as like what we consider to be the standard ChatGPT, I think won't even look like ChatGPT probably 5 years from now, because there's so much iteration and innovation happening there. But regardless, let's listen to the song. Let's see if it matches that winter afternoon, cup of tea, smooth vibes we asked for. All right. I love that. I can see myself sitting on a porch with a nice cup of tea, listening to that music. We'll show you that we can obviously change this with our prompt as well. So yeah, let's make it really, really fast. And instead of smooth vibes, maybe we want... Oh, these all sound awful. I'm just going to add to our prompt and say with saxophone. All right, if I spelled that right. I don't know if I did, but I tell you what, beauty of generative AI is it's trained on all sorts of data, including words and data sets that are misspelled. So it's actually really great at interpreting statements that you maybe didn't spell everything right in. All right, so much faster tempo. It brought in the saxophone that we asked for, and you could see how all of the things we talked about before in terms of iterating with this prompt, giving it more detail, will get us to an even better output with this technology. So we're making music, where we've made some voices. I'm going to jump into another tool called Midjourney, which actually helps ignore all of that. I am looking for this page here. Here we go. So this is a tool called Midjourney, like I just said, and we can generate images. So I'm going to refresh this here. And these are all images that have actually been created with Midjourney. But I'm going, look around. I thought I had already logged into this. Apologies, everyone. I tested this right before I got here. Of course, it logged me out. I'm going to join back really quickly here. All right, perfect. And so now all I have to do in this little prompt window is ask for the image I want to see. So classic one for me is dog riding a bike. I like this one because it is not something you see in real life. So it's always fun to see how the AI interprets something like this. So you'll see it's loading here, 20% complete. So we'll give that a second to let this complete producing these images. I can maybe even scroll down. This is my team account at work, so you can see some of the other things our team has created. We use this a lot for concept imagery. We build VR immersive experiences. So we have one right now that's being built around sustainability and the formation of coal under heavy layers of earth. And so you're seeing the team create some concept imagery for that. These are all pretty crazy. Let's scroll back up to the top and let's look at our fun dog on a bike here. And so you can see with a couple of sentences, one sentence, we now have these very fun images. So we've got one dog on a bike here. We got another one. I like how he's wearing 2 sets of glasses. This is a great example of how hallucinations are not unique to just text output. That can also happen in the image output as well. So that's what you're seeing here. AI not fully understanding that you'd only have one pair of glasses in this situation. You can see in this one, this one's a little bit more photorealistic. So also when we talked about the prompt template I provided isn't perfect for image generation, but the concepts still apply. More information, the better. So you can really dial in, do you want something more photorealistic? Do you want something that's got more of this painted aesthetic? You can determine all of that by how you speak to it. Even this one's got a little bit more 3D aspect to it. And so really, really fun to work with these tools. there's more that we can do here, but we're already running out of time, so I just want to move forward. But if this is something that's of interest to you, happy to dive into more detail or connect afterwards. I'm going to jump back to our presentation here, and I have one last thing I want to call out. So we talked about working with text, working with images, working with music, working with sound. AI is doing all these new cool providing all of this new cool functionality for us. Where's this going? And this isn't the end goal for AI, but something that I think really gets people thinking about the far reaches of this technology. This is actually from a study that Meta conducted around Llama 3, their open source AI model. And essentially leveraging generative AI, they were able to show someone an image and then just using output from their brain through some sort of neural interface, not something where it's plugged directly into your brain, but if you've seen like, I'm forgetting the name of it. They're like stickers that go on your body that can read like your heartbeat and any sort of physiological reactions your body's having. They actually just use those. They take all of those data endpoints from what your body is responding with and can actually recreate an image. So it's literally taking your brain waves. Let me start over. They are showing you an image. They are taking your brain waves, and based off your brain waves, they can recreate an image. And so that's what you're seeing here. On the left is what the user was shown. On the right is what the AI crafted based purely on what that person was thinking. This is pretty scary stuff. I think you're not all alone in thinking that. There are many researchers in the field today that think in the next 5 years we'll be able to see each other's dreams because the technology is so good. Yes. And so I always get a good no when I talk about that slide. What I want to say, this is essentially the end of the presentation. I'm going to open up the questions after this, but kind of what I want to leave you all on is I personally see technology as a mirror, and it reflects the intentions of the users who are using that technology. So when you look at this, there are definitely bad actors who are going to use this technology to do bad things, and I think we need to be prepared for that. But I will say this, I don't think it's on an individual level that we're responsible for that, and I even hesitate to say it's at the business level, going to OpenAI saying that they need to regulate these things. I think this is the importance of us knowing about this technology and advocating for leaders and our government to protect policies to actually protect us and the way that this technology is being used. I think that's a conversation that's not being had enough, and that's why I do talks like this. I think it's much easier to actually fight back against those bad actors, do good things with this technology to balance out those bad actors. That only comes when you know about the technology and then you all continue to use it for healthy, ethical, responsible use cases. And especially organizations like Sealaska, Heritage Institute, organizations like ASU, obviously, and other educational institutions, I think are uniquely positioned to be at the forefront of AI technology adoption and be the ones providing these really helpful, holistic solutions that actually assist people in their day-to-day lives. So I know it's scary, but I also think we're in a position where we can leverage this for good use. And even in this case, something I saw in that paper is this being used as a tool to help soldiers or other individuals suffering with PTSD, understanding what they're seeing in their dreams and being able to speak to that and speak to a therapist about that. It's actually a very powerful way of using this information. So I know it's scary, but there is positive ways that this can be leveraged. And I think the more we know about it, the more we adopt it, and the more we understand it, the more we can fight for that. But with that, I will pause there. I think I'm like 2 minutes over. Any questions? Yes.
So where do you think stand with AI when it comes to plagiarism and copyright?
So as of right now, you cannot copyright something that is purely AI. However, there is a legal settlement that's being had around this right now. But if you say you wrote something yourself and then you used AI to edit it, you could still technically copyright that. As long as there's some form of human input or collaborative work between a human and AI, you are capable of copywriting that. In terms of plagiarism, that is a larger, more complicated question. I think one of the larger issues with AI right now, or not even with AI, with the models that are available right now, is how those companies collected all the information that they used to train those models. A lot of those companies essentially just scraped the entire internet, all the publicly available books, YouTube videos, all those transcripts, and use that as their data sets. And so sometimes the output that you can get will resemble the input, and not everyone consented to their information being inside of this tool. And so there have been cases where things are written by ChatGPT in a very similar manner to something that someone else has already produced. There's two elements to that. From an individual standpoint, I would just make sure that you're taking your content. There are plagiarism checkers online that you can leverage that will show you, hey, some of this content might be a little similar to this content over here, just so you have that understanding. And then from a creator standpoint, I think there's also new protections that are going into place to protect your artwork from being ingested by these tools. So I know from an image standpoint, Adobe and a few others have toggles inside of your settings where you can say, hey, I don't want any of my artwork being ingested into these tools. I know Reddit and Twitter and other websites have actually locked down their APIs to ensure that work posted there is not being automatically scraped by these AI companies to ingest your data. So it's something that's always changing, but right now, is I would say, if you're working with the AI, double check that your output is not plagiarizing others. And if you're producing work that you do not want inside of AI, make sure that you are checking with where you are hosting those assets and that content to ensure that it is not publicly available to those model builders. Yes.
So today's lecture is being videotaped. Would it be possible to feed that video into one of those interfaces and ask it to create a quiz with multiple choices, for example?
100% you could do that. You could definitely do that. That's actually something we're working on at ASU as well. We already have lectures of all these professors. Why couldn't we throw that into a tool like this? It generates all these questions. And not only can you just create questions, but it's nice now because we can create a different quiz for every student. And when we talk about things like cheating, that's a really compelling solution of you didn't get the same quiz anyone else got, or we worded the questions in a different manner. So yes, you can do it, and there's a lot of control you have over the output that you will receive as well.
Hi.
Yes.
Thank you very much. This is terrifying to me. I also reject, it takes me a lot, like I had a Walkman when everybody had iPads, it takes me a long time to catch up with technology. But this, as an artist, it's so scary to me, and it seems like a classic thing. Like we've seen this story play out in Hollywood. Like AI takes over. Like when does it stop?
So I have two thoughts here. And I want to say my background is originally in design. I got my start in media production, doing film production. I eventually went on to be a graphic designer, then a UX designer, and then I've also was a XR experience builder. So I do a lot of design. I consider myself a creative. And I think for me, I see AI as a tool to empower individuals. If we are putting all of the copyright issues aside, which are very real issues that I think there are already solutions in place to address those, I think we've all been limited by our capabilities and the time that we have. I would love to be, maybe not Van Gogh, but I would love to be a professional painter. But I know that that takes time and investment and upwards of years to get to the skill level that I see in my head. So if I'm an artist who just has a vision, who wants to communicate something that could still move individuals, I see this as a way to bring that to life, even though I maybe don't have that skill set. I think every creative, if we take that film analogy, every director of photography, every concept image creator or artist, every writer is now a director. You have the means to create every piece of these larger experiences. I think AI enables creatives to think bigger at the end of the day. That's not necessarily what all creators want to do. So I think the flip side of that is AI fundamentally will make it easier to produce all forms of media, but I don't think that takes away from the artistic value of the media that already exists. I think this is exactly what happened when the camera was introduced. Painters said, well, you're not going to want us to paint things anymore because now you have a camera. And then video cameras came around, and photographers said, well, everything's going to be video, so where does video fit into this? And then YouTube came around, and cell phones made it even easier to do video. And people said, well, how am I going to use all my film equipment if everyone's got a camera on their phone to do all this even easier than before? AI is just a natural extension of this. I don't think this is a problem that's unique to humans. And I think we all understand that and will still have some form of value for traditional art forms. And I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon.
We can keep up with the sustainability of it all. I think it's if we can use AI to then counter-produce everything, we're just making so much, and then everybody's inundated with things, right?
That's very true.
It's just terrifying to me, but I understand that I appreciate that answer. I know it's not just AI, and it's just scary to me. But
that fear is totally normal. I hope I quelled some of the fear. Yeah, awesome. Another question? Yes.
Thank you, Auryan. We really appreciate all the insight you've given us. I actually had two questions. I'm sorry. First one, you talked about how AI can't decipher right, or when an output is not, it doesn't decipher right from wrong. Mm-hmm. Does that also mean it can't decipher fact from fiction? And then the second question I have is for organizations like Sealaska Heritage, where we have all sorts of proprietary information on our website and social media. Is there something that we can do as an organization? Is there a toggle that we could switch to prevent access to particular information, or is it all or nothing access?
Both fantastic questions. So your first question, in terms of understanding what's right and wrong, or real or fiction, you're absolutely right. The model cannot differentiate between those two. However, if we're getting more technical, there is something that's called an AI agent. It's essentially multiple AI working together to perform more complicated functions. So what you might have, if this is an issue that you're running into and you want to automate a process that is being hindered by this, you'd have your first AI that just does your content creation, and then maybe you have a second AI that's acting as your fact checker that says, hey, I'm now referencing this set of data you gave me to what was produced, and I could say with this much accuracy that this is true or false. Then it would send that signal either to a third bot or to the first chat bot that says, hey, this was wrong, here is the correct information, update this response, fact checks again, it passes that test, and then it's delivered to the user. So agents can be implemented to mitigate some of those issues. And then in terms of, from an organizational standpoint, in terms of protecting your information, that's a little bit more involved question. That's something I'd be happy to connect with offline. I think depends on where you're hosting that information. And I would say, all things considered, what's the proper way of saying this? I think it was a bit of the Wild West about a year ago when it came to collecting content for your models. There's been multiple lawsuits against Google and OpenAI for scraping that information. So I don't think they've been as brazen about doing it recently, but it still doesn't hurt to implement some protections inside of your data. So happy to talk about that offline if that works for you.
Can we assume that anything that we have written that's in public domain, like a government report that's on a website, papers that are published, things that are placed in repositories, can we assume all of that is now subject to this process?
If it's in the public domain, I would say yes, 100%, especially as these copyright issues become more prevalent. These companies are leaning on public domain work even more because it can be used for these sorts of purposes.
Well, I've heard a copyright lawyer say that anything that's on the web is in the public domain. Images, anything.
So you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people disagree on that, and I think that's not even per se my expertise, but I think there are obviously like videos online, like Paramount's uploading videos that could be accessed through the Paramount website. And because that video is there, it doesn't mean it's not under copyright, and that if I said that this video is mine and showed it in a movie theater and charged for it, they'd be like, no, that's under copyright, you can't use that. So there is information online that is protected, but what you're describing in terms of, hey, this is publicly available, anyone can look at this, why couldn't we use this for AI purposes as well, is largely the argument that OpenAI and other companies are putting forward in court to defend their use of that data. Which is right is yet to be decided in the eyes of the law, but many agree with your standpoint there, but many also disagree.
We have one online. Was the poem that was generated by ChatGPT original, or was it sampling from existing works? Same for the imagery of a dog on the bike. Is AI actually creating visuals, or does it rely on existing work?
It's a little bit of both. It is 100% relying on work that's already existed and has been trained on this model. Again, could be public domain work, so it's not a matter of stealing this work. It's just already publicly available, but it's referencing that to create something entirely new. So all those images you saw, they have never existed before I created them, but it was using, millions and millions of different parameters and components from different images and patterns that it recognized to create that. So we couldn't have that final output without a repository of already generated images, but it is not just stealing pieces of an image and stitching it together. It is creating entirely new pieces of art.
Thank you. We work a lot with indigenous language reclamation work, and we've been hearing a lot about AI in that world. Can you talk a little bit about how ASU might interact with indigenous languages in Arizona and using AI to learn or teach or create resources?
So I can speak highly about it. I'm not as involved, but I've heard of a few different use cases. One was, actually this isn't even from Arizona. We have a lot of partners actually in Hawaii. We're working with a few different colleagues at the University of Hawaii who just got a $17 million grant to preserve indigenous practices and genealogy using AI. And one of the use cases that they're using now is to preserve the Hawaiian language and different dialects of the Hawaiian language that are less well known. So working with these individuals who have that language, recording it, getting samples of it, and then building it in protected, closed models. So these are things that are not publicly available. They're only accessible by that community to create AI machines that could reproduce that language or be able to speak to how that language was created or their stories around that language. So there's a lot of work going on in that realm, and there are absolutely ways to do it responsibly and ethically so that it's still being owned and preserved by the communities. I'm sorry, I just keep knocking this cup over. That is still owned and managed by the communities that have actual access to that information.
Hi. So I've been having fun with language on it, just starting to use AI. So I asked it, knowing the answer, I said, how do you say thank you in Shimalgik, the language of the Tsimshian? And it told me thank you in Haida. So I responded back, you are incorrect. and I said, this is how you say it, just having fun playing with it. And it came back, oh, thank you, blah, blah, blah. It gave me a long. Anyway, I just following up on language stuff. I'm experimenting with it. It's a lot of fun. And it told me it was the wrong language family. And so I just said, no, that's not right. But anyway, I just see so much potential with language.
I completely agree. I'm glad to hear you're already messing around with those sorts of use cases. And I'm personally am curious to see what it's capable of doing, 2-3 years from now when it has access to more information. I'd see a world where it could respond correctly the first time. So who knows? Maybe you all will be responsible for those capabilities long term.
Well, thank you so much, Auryan. I think we are a little bit over 1 p.m., so I think we're going to have to wrap up question and answer. But thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Perfect. Thank you all for coming.